Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the Genesis Studio Geneva. My name is Irene Franco. I'm the head of public relations for Genesis Motor Switzerland, and I am delighted to welcome you here tonight for this very special evening in a very intimate setting. Our series is called The Talks by Genesis, presented by Monocle. It is a journey that we started roughly 2 years ago. We started with events in London, in Munich. We recently were in Zurich just a couple of weeks ago. Last week we were in London, and it is really for us a great honor to have so many lovely guests with us tonight. I'm not doing this on my own. We have a big crew here with us. On my left is Stefano Lo Cicero. He is our studio manager for Geneva. Or as we would say, he's the maître de la maison. He will, in a few seconds, say hello to you in proper French. I would rather steer away from it. Tonight, the topic is really how design can improve the quality of life, how design can induce well-being. This is a topic that is very close to the heart of Genesis. It is part of our DNA. Genesis has been up since 2015. We started our brand in Seoul. We have been in the European market now since 2.5 years. So we opened the first studio in Zurich. Then we opened Basel a couple of months later. We opened London, recently Edinburgh. We are also in Munich and Frankfurt. And the new entry is actually Geneva, which just came aboard this May. So this is the very first Monocle event that we get to do here in this beautiful Geneva studio. And at Genesis, it's really about hospitality. This is what we're passionate about. It's hospitality, it's design, it's what we call athletic elegance, and it's also technology, of course. But I will leave the word now to Stefano, who will say coucou to you in French, and I wish you a very lovely evening.
Merci Irène. Alors je tenais également, au nom de tout Genesis Studio Genève, vous remercier sincèrement d'avoir répondu présent à notre invitation de ce soir. Alors vous savez, chez Genesis, nous appliquons la philosophie coréenne qui dit que chaque personne qui franchit le seuil de nos studios sont considérés comme des invités. Et nous sommes très heureux, moi-même et toute mon équipe, ils sont par là, de vous accueillir aujourd'hui dans notre studio. Les valeurs fondamentales de Genesis, il y a plusieurs points. Il y a bien entendu l'accueil, la technologie, mais également le design. Pour nous, le design est très important. Alors bien évidemment, sur nos véhicules, comme vous pouvez voir, qui sont de véritables pièces de designer où chaque détail est soigné, mais c'est également dans notre agencement. Comme vous pouvez voir dans le studio, en fait, tous les studios dans tous les continents, dans le monde entier, sont identiques. Et le but, c'est justement d'accueillir nos invités dans une ambiance apaisée, dans une ambiance chaleureuse. Et c'est vraiment quelque chose d'extraordinaire. Et nous sommes vraiment particulièrement contents à Genève, comme disait Irène, parce que nous avons inauguré ces locaux le 11 mai donc, de cette année. Nous vous inviterons pour l'anniversaire l'année prochaine, c'est promis. Et c'est vraiment un des premiers événements, grands événements que nous faisons dans notre studio. Alors, je vous remercie encore une fois. N'hésitez pas tout au long de la soirée, si vous avez des questions, que ce soit sur la philosophie Genesis, sur les modèles. Moi-même et toute mon équipe sont à votre disposition. Merci beaucoup en tout cas.
Thank you, Stefano. French speakers always use so many words to say so simple a few things. So now it is really my great pleasure to introduce you to our real host of the night. She does this for a living, so it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Emma Nelson. She is has been the presenter for Monocle Radio for the past 12 years, and it's a great honor to have you here with our guest tonight. Thank you.
Grazie, Irene. Thank you very much indeed. A very good evening to you. Shall I bring my cherished guest onto the stage? We'll introduce you in a moment. Take a comfortable seat. And a very warm welcome. Gosh, that seat's very low down. Hello, everyone. I'll perch. This is the third in a series of 4 talks that we're doing with Genesis. The subject of hospitality is something which has been stitched through every one of these talks that we've done. And we're going to be talking today about the importance of design, as we've just heard, but that emotional connection that you can make as well. Because at the end of the day, if you can't make that emotional connection with the person who sits and drives your car or lives in your apartment or goes and stays in your hotel, then you may as well stop and go home and give up. So I shall try in French for a moment. Un accueil très très chaleureux aux Talks with Genesis. Nous parlerons de l'hospitalité sous toute forme, par exemple des hôtels, aux villes, aux communautés, mais surtout on va parler de l'importance de la chaleur humaine. Et ce soir, à la fin, il y aura des prix pour vous, pour les meilleures questions. Donc c'est une petite concurrence à la fin. Donc préparez-vous, réfléchissez bien, parce qu'on attend les meilleures questions. Et c'est des belles prix aussi. C'est pas une voiture, je suis vraiment... Bon, qui sait? Peut-être. So, for those of us who've just walked in, there will be prizes later tonight. Monocle quite likes to hand out prizes for the best questions. So think well, and who knows, it might be a car. It might not. Might not. Who knows? It is my absolute pleasure to welcome to the discussion tonight Nicolas Lemoigne, who's head of... This is a mouthful. This is why I've got notes. Head of the Master of Advanced Studies in Design for Luxury and Craftsmanship at ECAL in Lausanne. Welcome, Nicolas. Nicolas and his team of students take briefs from luxury houses, everything from watchmakers to hoteliers, and he and his students take the brief and make prototypes and ideas, some of which are used in marketing, others are used or actually become go-to-market, don't they? So thank you very much indeed for your time tonight. Philippe Bonot, that's a good name for this, is the founding partner of Bonot Zapata, which is a Geneva-based design studio. His company is behind the recently renovated Parliament here in Geneva. And he's also, you're very big in cooperative constructions as well, aren't you, Philippe? His work at Chêne Bougerie is something that is well worth a visit. Philippe says that craftsmanship and quality of life are the basic ingredients when you design a building. Thank you for coming, Philippe. And Ed Stocker is Monocle's Europe editor at large, dispatched across the continent regularly. He has first-hand also of Italian everyday hospitality, having moved to Milan a few years ago. Previously, Ed was the America's New York bureau, our man in New York for Monocle. So tonight, Ed will be able to tell us how the Americans do it. So a little round of applause for our guests. So a few questions. We'll talk about some guiding principles first. I mean, this is the big question, and it's the hard one. So for you, and let me start with you, Nicolas, what qualifies as good hospitality? What is it that you can tell us there when you experience it?
So good evening, everyone. First of all, so on a design perspective, I think, good design and hospitality starts also with... as you said, like emotion. And I think related to an object, we have to think always about all the senses. You know, it's about, of course, the aesthetic, but then it goes to the sound, it goes to the smell, it goes to the feeling, you know, and it's not just pure function. And this is where it's really everything starts as an idea, like when you work on a topic, on a brief. Again, I think that you have now, like in the design perspective, again, like you have different disciplines also, like people being more and more specialized in these domains, like in these feelings, in these emotions, and we have people also being sound designer, being also more related to the feelings, to the textures, and I think this is also bringing more and more depth into the design scene, into the design perspective, to really try to increase the not just the beauty of the object, but to make it even more relevant in everyday life. And again, I think a beautiful object and a successful object is also an object that is not just following trends, but also something that looks familiar, something that in which you feel particularly at ease with, something that really lasts in time. And I think this is where the biggest challenge probably is when we have to work on a brief, you know, when you work for such a brand.
Thank you for that. So we're talking about objects and the way they touch, they feel, and they smell. That's the smaller things. But Philippe, you design communities. So what is it that when you think about hospitality and community, what is the most important thing for you?
Well, the thing is, as architects, what we say that we have to make things possible. So that we have to design spaces where the life, whatever it is, if it's housing or if it's like in the parliament, this special type of work, we have to make things possible. So it all starts with talks with the people who are directly concerned with the spaces they will have to live in or to work in. So that's the basic ingredients to answer.
And Ed, not having to design anything, but having to report on what people like Philippe and Nicolas are doing. When you are on your travels and you're reporting for Monocle and you see something that you think, that's got hospitality stitch in it, or even in the hotel that you're staying when you're going to visit these people, what is it that for you think, okay, they've got it right here?
Yeah, I mean, that's super interesting, isn't it? I think one part is not trying too hard in a way, you know. But I was thinking on the train up here from Milan, you know, what is the definition of hospitality? And obviously an obvious one is, you know, being welcoming. But then I was also thinking, well, if you go a bit deeper, it's also being part of something. I think feeling part of something. So that could be in a hotel. It could be, you know, if it's a historic hotel, you might feel part of its history. Or if it's a restaurant and the owners are passionate and they have this incredible story, maybe they make you feel part of what they're about. You almost feel welcomed into their family. So I think in quite general terms, it's perhaps an intimacy, a feeling part of something, and also, like I said before, not trying too hard, you know, not trying to push that idea. It should come naturally, and that's harder than it sounds, I think. And so I guess those are some of the elements I think about on my travels.
There is that issue, isn't there? Making good look easy is really hard, isn't it? Would you agree, Philippe?
Yeah, when we were talking about this yesterday, for instance, it's because we are here in this place where you have incredible sophisticated cars. I'm talking next to someone who's specialized in very sophisticated objects, and architecture is not so sophisticated. So it's more a question of creating a relation between the craftsmen, the people who are going to actually build something, and the way you organize and the way you design and you put things together, and the way they are received by the people who will have to live there. So it's we are intermediates, I would say. So this is how it works. You can't just think of a nice detail, nice construction, nice design if you don't know the people who are going to build it and to finish it, and you have to be behind the whole process. So this is something particular in architecture, I would say.
That's a nice little cue for you, Nicola, isn't it? Because you have your group of students. Tell us about what your students do and a little bit about, you know, what happens when a client that makes very beautiful handbags, for example, picks up the phone and says, Nicola, we need some new handbags, please. And then what happens next?
Well, then we do magic, always. No, yeah, this is basically the way it starts, you know. This program exists for a bit more than 10 years, so it's quite recent, actually, and it was quite something to create a program like this, you know, based on luxury in Switzerland, you know, when you work in a public school in Lausanne, you know, where everything is very conservative and people are just like... So when you start saying that you want to create a program for which you maybe work with luxury brands and probably gain money and just like invite people from all over the world, so it was a bit tricky. But no, then, you know, like starting with projects that were more like communication oriented, because yeah, design can be fun, design can be just trendy, design can be just, you know, like answering a very easy question. But then brands started to come to us with more specific demands and more specific briefs and more specific expectations. And this is where it became too interesting, you know. So from designing an object, you know, like tableware or just a vase, and beautiful vase, so we know how to do that. And this is fine. Of course, you need to find the nice artisans, manufacturers to make it beautiful. You do beautiful pictures and that's it. But then when you start going deeper into the projects and you start thinking about rituals, when you start thinking about, you know, how to design the object and how the user is going to experiment this object, you know, in everyday life, how you are going to offer it to someone maybe. So this is where it becomes really interesting and where you can go really further with this kind of perspective. And I think, again, this is something we also noticed, you know, when we started the program 10 years ago, the briefs we received were really like super basic and really product-oriented. And now it's more holistic. Now people think about more what happens, and integrating all kinds of questions behind just a simple project. And I think in the future, the designer or architects, really have the power to create this kind of emotion, creating this kind of warmth, welcoming people, or embracing, like the way people would feel at ease, would feel like really like at home and in a familiar place. And I think the biggest challenge.
Could you bring this to life by giving us an example of when a client has come to you with a very emotionally charged brief, and you have sat down in front of your students and said, you will improve your client's quality of life if you use this piece of paper or this kind of packaging or the way that the product feels?
Yeah, definitely. It's really, of course, there's the students. They are like a team of professors, assistants, people, also specialists we invite. And I think it's more a discussion. As a designer, you're never alone. You're never the only one just like making drawings and just sending it to manufacturers and, like just craftsmen and say, okay, like, let's do that. It's always a discussion. Always like people, it's a teamwork. So with the students, it's always, we expect them to really bring, their own vision. The class I have every year, we have students being like 22 years old and sometimes 40 years old. And it's also interesting to see that they come from different cultures. Actually, like the most represented nationality is South Korea. So we have every year like
That's
1/3 or 1/4 of the class from South Korea. And actually, I must say the level is always incredible. Very quiet class, always, but super, super high level creativity and also way of looking at things, understanding, like really going very deep into the answering the brief in a very, very specific way. But then you have also younger students and also coming from other kind of world like art and getting crazy. And I think this is from this craziness and also from this very design and engineering oriented solution that you can really like mix ideas together and then start to build something that becomes more realistic and more interesting. So again, it's a teamwork with the students, led by professors, of course, who are specialists. And then all together, it's, of course, as you can imagine, a long process, but then you come up with something that makes sense, something that is not just, as you say, something you can't build up. You can cheat, you have a story, you have to understand the codes, you have to understand, but at the same time, you have to bring a bit of innovation, you have to bring personality, and everything combined together, then you start to have something that makes sense for the brand.
And let's develop this a little bit more with you, Philippe, and what you did at the Parliament in Geneva here. The way that details that perhaps I might miss, but you have made sure are there to make the place not just a serious place, but a hospitable place and a place where people can guide Geneva's future, but in a consensual way, either from issues of transparency or even to where people are sitting. Just talk us through what you did there.
Well, very simply, when I was listening to you, what was one of the questions that we were asked is, they told us, the Parliament was before in a U shape. They also say the British shape, but it's not exactly the one, but face to face. They help us make a Parliament room where people have more gentle talks and work better and have a nicer atmosphere. So it was really the question, the way it was given, because they would throw a glass of water to each other. It was at a local standard. It's a bit wild in Geneva. So we organized the shape of it was an hemicycle, so this was the first decision to be taken. And then we opened the windows because there were some strange glasses, I don't know the word in English, des vitraux, the décoratifs.
Stained glass windows.
Yeah, that you couldn't see outside. So there was people, the Parliament people were stuck in the room. So we opened the window, we changed the window. They can now see the city and the for whom they're working for. So these details were the first decision we took. Then we decided to open the roof to upper the level of the roof. It wasn't really possible in the competition. It was a competition one. And we decided, no, let's break this ceiling and go up to the top of the roof and open glass window. So this brings light from from the sky, and we had some feedback from member of the parliament who told us we feel better just because of that, because when we, for instance, we get bored a bit, we can't listen, we look up, and they feel the light coming from the sky, and they told us, yeah, there is something, that helps us, and we feel better. And then another thing, because I could talk about the details for hours, and I was thinking it's a pity we can show a photo. It would be easier for everybody to understand what I'm talking about. But that's a place it's not very modest to say that, but when I go back for whatever reason or to show it, everybody goes there and wants to stay, just sit and stay. And we went to the chairs that we chose very carefully through a very long process to have chairs that really makes you feel, not like home, but it's we had to mix the ceremonial that that this is a space for one of the higher function in the Republic, and then help the people feel comfortable to stay long hours and talk and not looking at their watch to leave. So these were the kind of questions we had to resolve, and maybe not all asked this way, but we transformed the question this way to say, okay, this is what we're trying to do, and we explained that, and that's hopefully what we did.
Philippe, I don't think we need pictures. I think your words are beautiful enough. I hope you'd agree. Yeah. Just widening this out a little bit more, Ed, when just listening to that, the people wanted to come to work in a place, and this is a big question that a lot of us are discussing about whether our workplaces were hospitable enough before the pandemic, and what makes a good place to come to work. And often light is a big thing. You don't have big lights at home. We have tiny little flats, and we all go and like to work in big offices. There's that sense of event, isn't it, and that sense of formality when you go into a place and you think, okay, I am now here. I am now in a wonderful car showroom because I can see the cars. But on your travels, I mean, you've visited lots of hotels and seen them designed. Which hotels get it right in terms of giving you that sense of occasion and giving you that sense of where you've been and saying, right, you know where you are, this is brilliant, settle in? I'm basically asking you to compare America with Italy.
Ooh, well, I wouldn't want to name specific places because I think that's a little bit unfair. But I just want to say I think it's great to design a parliament where people can't throw water at each other. So well done on that one. I mean, in terms of those things you said, in terms of getting it right, I think it was a lot about what you were saying, and these sort of rules are applicable to, whether it's a parliament or whether it's a hotel. Just thinking about the lighting, and also just these things that aren't necessarily palpable. Some people won't even realize why they feel better, right? Or why they like a hotel more. They're just happier, or they just enjoy it because of those things, because of a tactile material, because of the way the bright light through the natural light coming in through the windows makes you feel. Something as simple as plants being in the hotel that make you feel a connection with nature. So those are some of the elements. But of course, when it comes to, say, hotels, it may be just lapping up. I touched upon it a bit earlier as well. The history of a place, if it's this amazing, incredible, like Villa Egea in Sicily that has this amazing history of royals and movie actors that went there, and there's black and white photos on the walls, and you go there and you feel that you're a part of that history. Something like that can do it. So that's a long answer, isn't it?
And I wonder whether we can move on to cities as well, or places where we've all lived and travelled. Philippe, I want to bring you in here because you told me before we started that you've just spent 7 years living in London. Before that, you've lived in New York, but now you find yourselves on the banks of the lakes here. And dare I say it, this is a pretty hospitable city, insofar as I've been for a run along the banks of your lake, I've been for a walk, and tomorrow I will go for a dip in your lake, and I will be very happy because I don't get that in London. I just get shouted at on the tube. Can a city actually be inherently hospitable?
Sorry, can you...
Can a city have an identity which is welcoming? Or is it all about the people? We'll come to the people in a minute.
I have to answer this question. Yeah, no, I believe so. I absolutely believe so. I enjoyed very much. I say, maybe we don't agree or other people won't agree, but I say London is a very hospitalier city. It's because people are just, it's easygoing. It's you think it's a bit stressful, but you told me that. But I think
where did I say it was stressful?
In London, you say un peu stressant. Ouais. But I think so. I think it comes from the people. Definitely. No, people have a big role in that. Definitely. In Switzerland, it's a fantastic place to live, but you count a lot on the scenery, the Alps, the lake. You can't look at that without thinking too much if you're happy with your neighbors or not. Whereas in London, you have to live with the people around. So because the big cities, I always think of that. The great metropole cities, their landscape is the building in front of you. They have their proper landscape. So it has to give something. If not, you're lost. Whereas in Switzerland, it's not to criticize. I'm Swiss. I would be. It's not my role to criticize Switzerland, but the landscape, the natural landscape, counts a lot. So it helps a lot. So every place has its advantages.
We began by talking about warmth, didn't we? Thank you for that, Philippe. And it is the warmth and la chaleur humaine, isn't it? That you can have the most beautiful hotel, you can have the most beautiful Parliament building, the most beautiful apartment, but if the person who's standing in it has got their iPad up to there and doesn't want to talk to you and looks as if they've been sucking on lemons, you're not going to feel as if it doesn't matter, does it? It's all gone away. What would you say to that, Nicolas?
Well, you mean having an iPad in front? No, I don't know. I think it's a whole. I mean, there's so many things around. I mean, it's also like how people, integrate also technology, or how people also integrate and are also kind of aware and ready to welcome, this sense of hospitality, and the way also they really also live and experiment every situation. I mean, again, also like related to our experience, also to feel like welcoming people also in such a place. For instance, like now shops, boutiques are not what it used to be before, with a cold desk and just like shelves of product and goods, to be sold. Now it's about welcoming people. Now it's about not just like trying to sell them whatever they want or they could. It's about like proposing them a space and proposing to feel at ease, proposing also a moment, maybe with friends, and try to share something else. So, of course, having an iPad in front of your eyes doesn't help much because, you feel a bit stuck. But I think it's also interesting to maybe experiment and to be ready for this kind of also like new way of experimenting everyday life, and also just the idea of purchasing an object or going to a boutique, meeting a brand, and try to share also, because it's also quite important to see how much the client nowadays, they know so much about the product they are buying, and especially how much they are aware of what they are buying, because they have access to information, they have access online, or they are more curious than probably before. And now we have seen also, because we work a lot with the watch brands, and how much clients know more sometimes than the people working in the marketing team. I mean, it's quite crazy. And they challenge them. So you have to be aware. You have to know, like your subjects. And it's really like a whole thing, knowing how to welcome a customer and knowing how to bring him or her, like in a very specific mood. Yeah.
And Philippe, when you were designing, or when you are designing communal areas and communities, the importance of the fact that the people who are going to live there will know more, arguably, about the place than you do, because they're already there.
No, I was about to say we are lucky, because I don't think it's the case. No, people have very strong ideas of what they're looking for. They want to have a nice place to live in. They want to be happy where they're going to live, where they're going to raise their kids. So, of course, and they have lots of ideas, but I would say, no idea of how to give a shape to it. They see thousands of buildings in the internet. Of course, they have ideas of how it could look like. They have many ideas, but to transfer this into a shape of a space in which you will have to live, this is the little trick we keep for ourselves, and that's good.
I'm going to ask you what the little trick is. You can't keep it to yourself.
Well, it's what we do every day.
Making a communal
on the
space.
table.
Ed, I do want to ask you, I have sworn blind that I will not ask you about the hospitality of marrying into an Italian family, that I'm not allowed to ask you. But what I will ask is the hospitality of moving from the likes of the United States to Italy, and that everyday hospitality that we can all share and enjoy as well. I mean, you've had to raise a little boy in Milan, which must be incredibly exciting. But have you felt, did you feel a particular welcome there?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been allowed to change nappies in pretty much every restaurant in Milan on tables, so they've been pretty nice about that. And I've had a policeman come up to me and say, your son's feet look a bit cold, maybe you want to cover them up. So genuine concern about the well-being of my child from lots of members of the public and officials as well. So in that place, in that sense, a very hospitable place. But yeah, I mean, I lived for 6 years in New York and moved to Milan, as you were alluding to, Emma. Pretty different places. If you talk about service, New York is very, if you go to restaurants or bars or hotels, the service is very quick, it's very efficient. But, in Italy, you could argue that's not always the case. You might not always have someone attending your restaurant quickly, but, there's a warmth to service often and a passion. And some people say that sort of changes as you head further south. It's different in the north to the south. But I won't get involved in north-south politics this evening.
Thank you for that. Right. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming. Thank you for making the effort this Thursday evening. That's all we have time for now. But as we mentioned, there are some really beautiful cars to go and have a look at. But there is also something delicious to eat, a mixture of Korea and Geneva. And there are also some things, there's some people here that are rather sort of symbolize what Genesis is doing here, which is the Genesis personal assistant. This is a lady or a gentleman who will be able to give you a very, very good tour of a car. Not like a tour of a car that many of us will have experienced in the past. And Stefano will be able to direct you to the right people for that. But for now, can I just say my warmest of thanks to Ed, to Nicola, and to Philippe, and also to Stefano Locitero and to Irene Franco as well. Thank you so much for coming.